Welcome back to part 2 in how to make live AR pictures, where we're going to look at making the objects live. So let's have a look at what we've done so far. This is our room and we've got our picture on the wall, and we bring our iPhone into the scene. We start panning around with our iPhone in the room. Now hopefully our iPhone picks up the image of the bird. And if it does, it will actually assign an anchor point to that image. Then we attach a node to that anchor point, and in our case it is just a white sort of sheet. And what we want to do next is to actually give that some color and ultimately turn it into a movie. So let's return to our code, which we can see here. And what we're going to do is just give our plane some properties. So I'm just going to drop down and give ourselves some room. And I'm going to start by typing in plane dot first material, then dot diffuse, which is explained to as the material's diffuse response to lighting, whatever that means. And then we're going to do dot contents, which is the contents and the material's property, a color, image, or source of animation. Sounds good. And then we're going to make that equal to UI color blue. Now let's build and run that and see the difference it makes to our app. And hopefully we should actually see a blue shade instead of a white. And that looks pretty good to me. Now for our app, we want to include a movie. So we need to actually first of all locate that movie and add it to the project. So in our AR images folder, I've actually got the movie file that I'm going to use, and it's our bird moving, and I'm just going to check that playing there, and that looks good. So now what I want to do is just drag and drop that movie into my project, and I'm just going to put it in the kind of main area. So as I let go, we actually get a pop-up, and we just need to check those settings, make sure they look like that, and hit finish. And now our movie is inside our project folder. So I'm going to pause before we go any further and just go over what we're actually trying to achieve. So looking at our scene in front of us, we are at the point now where we have our bird picture visible in the world. So it could be on the wall, on the desk, or whatever. And the app has picked up the bird and added an anchor point to it. So it's sort of detected these points on the bird and then created a plane using exactly the same size object, place it over the top. So we've done that, that's really good. What we now want to do though is replace this blue object with a movie. So the code for the blue object, just to remember, that was a plane, talking about the plane that we created, and that's the first material. And that's an optional, so diffuse dot contents. Okay, and we've made that equal to just UI color dot blue. So what we now want to do is replace this with a movie object. So to do that, we actually need to create a movie object. We're going to do that using a function that we're going to create. So we'll just talk a little bit about that process now. Now, there's a couple of cool things that we've done to get our app to work. One of them is the fact that the bird object, we've called that's bird.png. And we've also put in a movie file called bird.movie. So this is going to enable us to actually use those names because we've basically got the same name for the two of them. So that's really, really helpful, and that's actually going to do some cool stuff. So when we create our function, we are going to utilize that. I'm just going to give you a basic idea of how the function is going to work. I'm going to call the function player item. I'm going to give that a property. And to shortcut that a bit and just to make our code nicer, I'm going to use an ability that we can actually give our function like a shortcut name. So it makes more sense that when we're calling it. So I'm going to use this idea of saying for item. And the parameter that we're actually going to use in our function is going to be called image name, and that is of type string. Then we're going to return an AV player. Okay, so that's basically our definition of our function there. I'm not going to write the code here, but I'm just going to say what's this going to do. And basically we are going to, come up with a link to the file. So we're going to say get the movie called image name .movie, which is the extension. Okay, we're going to use that word. And then once we've got that, we're basically going to create a player with that movie. And then we're going to return it. Once we've got that player, that's what we're going to put like up here. So our code for that suddenly changes to, instead of being equals UI color blue, you just say basically I want to call that function. So it's called player item. And our for image is going to be the name of our image. So hopefully that kind of makes sense what we're doing. When I go to do the code for this sort of stuff here, it's going to be tricky to follow, and I'm hoping that will make more sense how we're breaking that up. So let's go ahead and do that in code. Here's our viewcontroller.swift, and all we need to do now is just make a bit of room to put in our function. So I'm just going to put that here. And so what we came up in our plan was to call it func player item. I'll just get my case right. Open bracket, and then I'm going to use for item. And that's going to be image name colon string, because that's basically going to be our name of our file, or the image that we find. And we're going to return a type of AV player. So let's do our open. So the first thing we need to do is basically write some code to get the image name, or the movie called that image name. So we're going to do that. We're going to create a URL. So we'll say let URL equal, because this is basically the path to it. And we're going to go bundle, which is the bundle our objects in, our project, .main, .url. And the resource is going to be, for resource, the string is going to be image name. So it's basically saying, look in our project for a resource with the image name of our image, which is like, in this case, it would be bird. And then we're looking for the extension with .movie. So even though there's quite a bit of code there, it kind of makes sense what it's doing. Now we're basically going to create a player, which is of type AV player. And we are going to pass it that URL. Now we're getting a bit of an error on the let URL definition. And I think it's just basically, we just have to force that to happen. So we're just going to put an exclamation mark at the end to say, yes, we know what we're doing. And that should fix that. Now it's just the only other error is basically saying players not being used. So that's where we just need to set that up. So we're going to say player.play to basically start the player from like the AV player playing. And then we need to just finish that off by returning that player. Now the cool thing about what we've set up here is this is so that we can actually play multiple objects, because we're creating like this player as such. When it finds multiple anchor points later, it will just launch a player for each of them. Now, let's return back down to where we've got UI color.blue, and we just need to put our function call. So we're going to go player item for image, and we need to put in the string name. So we just need to add a little bit of code to get that reference happening. So we'll just put in this above. So we're going to say node.name equals image anchor reference image. So we're basically saying the image that we're finding, its name, we're going to pass that in as the node name. And then we can actually call that node.name to be passed across. And again, we're just using the apostrophe to say, just pass it. Okay, that looks really good. So let's build and run our app and have a look how it goes. And we should be happy with a movie playing. Let's have a look. We'll pass across. And there goes our bird moving. So hopefully you find the same thing, and I'll see you in the next part.